object-oriented fundamentals. And so in this video, so then let us, without losing our time, let us start our project. Here I have a class called, a folder called Java example. In here, I'm going to create a new folder called Complex Pro. So inside Complex Pro, as you can see, there is nothing else. Now let me open up a terminal. Now I'm inside a desktop in Java example.complex pro, and I'm going to use a text editor to write my Java code and to but it will create automatically if it does not exist. As you can see, it will create if once I've saved. So main.java has been created. So I'm planning to create a class called main, since every file is main, public class main. Inside here, let me declare a public static void main string, and it's done. This will be a starting point of our application when running. So I can say that system.out.println, and I just say app started. So to run and execute this file, let me close this one first of all, and I can use Java C. First, I'm going to Java compiler and main.java. As you can see, there is nothing error. If there is no error, it will create a new file called main.class. Now this is a binary code that is capable to execute on the top of JVM. So to run this one, so I just say Java main, and as you can see, the output is here, app started. Now I'm going to create another file called complex gedit complex.java. So this will create a new folder, a new file, called complex, which is extension is .java file. Now, since this is a separate file, I'm going to create a class called complex. Let me save it. As you can see, I have created complex.java over here. So the class name must be complex also. So inside here, I'm going to define my two attributes: private double real, private double imaginary, like this. Now, for the purpose of initializing, I'm going to create a constructor, public complex. So let me accept some kinds of double real, comma. Now I will assign like this. Let me copy just to reduce the errors. So this is a constructor that will accept two numbers and assign those values to the internal properties of this complex, this private instance variables. So we have done these kinds of thing, and let me override some kinds of methods, since every Java classes are extenders from object. So this is implicitly written. So you don't have to write extenders of objects, but every class is extenders from object. So I have to override some kinds of existing object. Public string to string is one of them. I just want to return this dot real. Now this is in form of string. I'm going to make it a string, and let me use some kinds of tertiary operator, and then this imaginary so I may by mistake type imaginary, So if it is greater than or equal to 0, the imaginary, it will just ask it, and this one. Otherwise, I'll leave it that one. So this is just print this value whenever you call the complex using system.out.println. Now let us save it, and let me go back to my main class. This one. Instead of app started, let me create two complex numbers. Complex C equals to new complex. This is the first complex number. You can create many complex instances by passing different values like this. So these are called objects. By using the existing constructor, so I have created 3 complex numbers. Like you can create any number of variables, you can create any number of object instances from this class. Once we define, let us see the values of C. C1 and C2, and let me run it. Now to run, I'm just type java c .main.java. I think there is error. Yes, I don't have I have C2 and I have C3. I don't have C1. That's correct, because C1 is not available. Everything is running, and to run it once again, as you can see, these are complex number 1, complex number 2. As you can see, there is I and there is minus if it is minus, and if it is positive, there is a positive around here. That is the toString method implemented like this because of the toString method. Okay, then now the next step is to create some kinds of functions inside the complex.java. Let me edit some kinds of a little bit about this complex.java. Let me add some kinds of properties such as modulus or conjugate. Public double modulus. A modulus is just a square root of return math. Math is available in lang package, math.security. So you don't have to import this thing. I mean the math library. Just use math.power is a power, and I just want to pass this dot real power of 2. This is the real part is the power of 2 plus and I just want to see the imaginary part squared. So this is just, as you can see, every function operates on the private memberships. So it is usually you usually define a function or a method to operate some kinds of inner processes or to manipulate such a kinds of numbers. The other thing I want to just make is void conjugate. Whenever you call this conjugate function, it's just this to imaginary, it just convert the sign of imaginary. If it is negative, it will convert to positive. If it is positive, it converts to negative. To do this, just we multiply by -1. So we have introduced two functions. Let us use them. So to demonstrate we are going to use Java, main.java. So over here, these are the values of C1, C2, and C3, and let us just use system.println just to make it the modulus of C. The first one is just C dot modulus. So it must show us the modulus of this C, and you can continue for C2. And the other thing is you can make C2 or any conjugate the C2 after conjugate is just C2. Right, let us see, and by running this application again, I have saved it, and to run it, let me first java c.main. It doesn't have any problem to run this java main, and the module of C, this above one, is this one. C2 after conjugate is 1 minus 4i. Because of this conjugate, you just have found this value. Alright, so these are the internal function. Now what I want from you is that I'm going to define an interface. We have talked about interface in our earlier classes, and you are going to create a class, another class that implement the interface. I am going to create that interface first. Now to create the interface I'm going to use again gedit so operations, let me say operations, still it is .java, and now it is rather it is class, it must be interface, interface operations. Now inside these operations I want you to implement these abstract methods. Public, it must return a complex instance, and it is said sum of two complex number, complex C, complex C1. So you must override this method in your concrete class that will implement these kinds of code. And the other one is product. I want you to do the product also. The other thing is subtract. I want you to do also the subtract, and lastly the same thing, the other divide. So these are the abstract methods that is defined or declared inside this interface called operations. So any class that implement these operations must override the sum, product, subtract, and divide operation and return another instance or object, an instance of complex object. Right? Let me save it. Then I have created these operations for you. Then I'm going to create only for addition purpose, and you will define the rest of that one. So then you will need to define your own class called my operations dot java, my operation dot java. Once it is ready, public my class my operation. So this is, we assume that this class will implement operations, an instance of operations, the interface. So then you are going to use implementers operations. Then you have to define the above things. For instance, let me minimize this one. So then I'm going to copy this, everything else, minimize it, and inside my operations I'm going to paste it. and then instead of a definition I'm going to return for now null, because I haven't used any kinds of code, so it doesn't have any kinds of things. That's good. Now everything is null. Just to make sure that whether it is correct or not, let me check by compiling the Java C main. I think it will work, but because I haven't used inside the main class. Oops. Now let me use my operation O equals to new my operation. So just to use operation, you can use this one, and you can say just O dot add or sum. I think it's sum. We just want to see and C2. I want to find the addition of C1 and C2, and I'll just assign complex C4 is equal to such a kind of thing. So the sum of the two links will be assigned to C4. I'm hoping to perform such a kind of operation, but for now it will be null because we haven't implemented the sum operation inside my operations. Just for checking up whether it's correct or not, and run this once again, it will do nothing else. Okay, now it's perfect. Now inside the my operation.java, you have to implement this thing, and this thing. Let me operate this one also for a simplicity. Let me show you this one, and you will feel the rest of the methods. Now to do that, I have to use encapsulation. That means I have to prepare getter and setter to be accessible these values outside my class. So to do that, here I'm just offering public double get real, and just return. This is a getter. You can make it final once if it is. If it doesn't have any setter gate, oops, gate imaginary, just a imaginary like this. Let me save it and go back to this my operation. Now I just want to return new complex. For the real part, I just want to get real plus C1, sorry, to get real, and I'll separate by commas. This will be one value. The addition of C of real and the addition of C1 real will be assigned to the new complex real with the same property C dot get imaginary plus C1 dot get imaginary. So the addition of the sum of these imaginary parts of C and C1 will be assigned to the new imaginary, because we have a constructor and we want to create a new complex number and return the sum. Let me save it. Let me go back to here inside main.java. Here it is. So we have to see this the addition of these two things. So then let me use so then this means C2 and C, the sum of C2 and C is C4, right? Because we have assigned C4 value. C4 is equal to sum of C and C2. Then we have to see the value of C4. Let me save it and go back to this. So java.main. Oops, main. So I have conjugated. So it is now the value of C2 is this one. So 1 plus and 0.5 is 1.5, and minus 4 plus 2 is minus 2. So this is the addition operation. So I am expecting from you guys that to implement this one. Instead of returning null, you have to do some kinds of code like this to produce a product, to produce the difference of using a complex set of number as a solution in the division. I hope this video will be useful for you to understand how objects and classes are used in addition to interfaces. Write the assignment for you in this comment. You can write these things, and see you in another video. Goodbye.